about it. A FISA warrant is in fact a license to spy. Now the question is, did you lie, cheat, or steal in order to do that? They did mislead the judge, get a warrant, multiple, ability to spy, and now we're asked to believe that you can trust the very people who know this and are covering it up.
There you've got Darrell Issa yesterday on one of the Sunday shows talking about the Department of Justice and the Republicans' investigation. They want a whole bunch of documents. They're not getting them, although the DOJ says they are providing them. Let's bring in Dan Bongino. He's got a lot of good sources on this. Former New York City police officer, former Secret Service guy, host of the Dan Bongino Show. Dan, thanks for joining us from Florida today. You know, toward the end of the week, we started to hear about how important it is that the Republicans get all the documents regarding this secret intel source. They almost regard that information as important as the whole Russia dossier.
Right, and there's a reason, Steve, because, listen, I've spent nearly 20 years of my life as a cop and a federal investigator. I have never in my life seen such an obvious frame job and setup. This was a sting operation against the Trump team. That is why it's critical that they hide the source. Why is it critical that they hide the source, Steve? Because we've been told the entire time by the hacks in the mainstream media, Democrats and some establishment Republicans, that the case against Trump was just a series of accidental contacts where they ran into the Trump team and they said stuff. But, Steve, let me ask you this. What if those contacts were deliberate? That throws this whole story out the window. I've been saying it for months, so have many other people. These were deliberate contacts. This was not a mistake.
I don't know what you mean by that.
I
don't know what you mean deliberate contact. People set up there to set up people on the Trump team, so set up this interaction and make it look terrible?
Yes, exactly, Brian. It's like, you know, I wind up on a park bench with you and ask you to rob a bank with me, and you've never met me before. You're like, who's this guy? There's only two possible explanations. Right. Either you really want me to rob a bank with you, or I'm trying to frame you for robbing the bank. I'd say it's the latter with Trump.
Well, when you're talking specifically about a source, they say that was embedded in the Trump team that provided a lot of information to Glenn Simpson and the dossier crew, right?
Brian, Simpson's already admitted in sworn testimony in the Senate that the FBI told Christopher Steele they had a source in the campaign. None of this is new news. And by the way, the list of subjects for that source or suspects is very short and very disturbing.
Yeah, it sounds like, according to what we've read, the source was not feeding things to the to Fusion. The source was actually feeding it directly to the FBI.
Yeah, and when we find out who the source is, I think some establishment Republicans are going to be a little worried, too. This was a swamp operation. This wasn't just Democrats.
Yeah. We want to show you this interview. It was Bernie Sanders. He was on with Jake Tapper, and Jake was asking, why did you support John Brennan for CIA director, and then you don't, when he was Gina Haspel's boss, but why don't you support Gina Haspel when they were doing the same thing right after 9/11? Listen to this.
Why is Brennan okay, but Gina Haspel is not?
If the United States condones torture for other people, then that subjects our own men and women who are captured to be tortured as well. I think Brennan did a good job in his position. I have serious reservations about this nominee.
You didn't have reservations about John Brennan. You voted for John Brennan.
It goes, I think, deeper than that, and that is the foreign policy that we have seen from Mr. Trump, something that I also strongly disagree with.
So it's because it's Donald Trump.
Yeah, guys, it doesn't go, Bernie says, well, it goes deeper than that. It doesn't go deeper than that. Let me just explain to you what's going on from a guy who's actually run for office before. The Democrat base has like blood from its fangs for Trump. They can't stand him. They will not allow anyone on there with the D in front of their name, anyone to do anything pro-Trump ever, even if it violates principles they've had in the past. Yeah. Look at the tax cut thing. The argument they made about the tax cut thing was that Nancy Pelosi, it's just crumbs. What do you mean? I thought you guys hated tax cuts. Now you want them to be bigger? They're complete hypocrites on this stuff.
So just important to bring up, we don't know how Haspel's going to go. People are optimistic, though, because over the weekend, Sleepy Joe Donnelly says he would do it. Joe Manchin says he would do it. However, obviously, John McCain's not going to be there to vote. He's not going to support it. But we also know that Jeff Flake is considering not doing it. And we don't know what Rand Paul's going to do. But they do think that more Democrats will end up putting her over the top, just barely.
Well, at least Rand Paul's principled on it. The Democrats are doing it just to get reelected. You know, you may see Heidkamp as well. I think you'll see a couple more. This is really a tough fight for the Democrats to get involved in. After 9/11 was a far different environment, and judging it now by those standards is kind of hypocritical for them.
Well, Gil, I think so, but obviously the only reason they're doing that is because they're in red states, and this is one of the last votes they will have to show that they are actually with Donald Trump as they run for re-election.
And the big vote is going to be on Wednesday. All right, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for joining us from Palm City today.
All right, now to some
Thanks,
of your
guys.
thank you. Now to some of your other headlines. A 5-year-old little girl is recovering this morning after being attacked by a bear on Mother's Day. The terrifying scene unfolding in Colorado, where her mother was investigating why her dogs were barking when she heard her daughter screaming.
She came out, she yelled at the animal, she screamed at it, and by doing so, she probably saved her little girl's life.
Wildlife officer